Hi, I'm Lina. Welcome to Lina's Storybook, where we share the most unforgettable audio novels. Let's get started.
My husband took his mistress on a romantic road trip up the coast and got into a horrific car crash at the automatic doors of the emergency room, with the metallic scent of blood heavy in the air. My husband desperately grabbed my hand. "If I don't make it, my estate must go too," he gasped, his voice barely a whisper. I immediately cut him off, screaming at the top of my lungs to drown out his final wishes. "Doctor, please hurry up and save him." Moments later, Chloe, his mistress, carried a wailing baby into the hospital lobby to fight me for his assets. "The law clearly dictates that illegitimate children also have inheritance rights," she proclaimed, her voice echoing off the sterile tiles. I turned and pointed a steady finger directly at my husband, who was now covered head to toe in medical tubes, a complete vegetable. "You said it yourself, it is an inheritance right. Wait until my husband takes his last breath before you come back." The afternoon the hospital notified me that Oliver had been in a near-fatal car crash. I was sitting at my dining table, having just finished gathering a complete, undeniable set of evidence of his infidelity. Bank statements, hotel receipts, and private investigator photos were spread out before me like a tragic mosaic of my marriage. Oliver was an executive with an annual salary of over $1 million. I was deeply disgusted by him as a person, but I couldn't bear to part with his money. A divorce would have meant splitting the assets and watching him build a lavish new life. But the hospital had essentially saved me from the fire. Driving to the emergency room, my mind was racing with pragmatic calculations. I had happily made mental preparations to authorize withdrawing his life support the moment the doctors gave me the grim prognosis. That was the plan. At least until Chloe, his mistress, blocked me right at the hospital entrance, holding a chubby baby boy tightly in her arms. "Your husband suffered severe injuries trying to protect me and our child. Are you still refusing to step aside?" she demanded, tears streaming down her perfectly contoured face. I stopped in my tracks and glanced at the child, who looked exactly like Oliver, carved from the exact same mold. A cold realization washed over me. If Oliver died today, this child would inherit a massive chunk of the estate. Taking the stairs two at a time, I rushed straight to the door of the emergency room. Oliver was lying on the ambulance stretcher, bloodied and broken, about to be pushed into the operating room for emergency resuscitation. Seeing me run over, his eyes widened slightly, and he desperately grabbed my hand. With a weak, thread-like voice he gasped, "If I don't make it, my inheritance must go to." I immediately cut off his words, shouting loudly for the entire corridor to hear. "Doctor, hurry up and save him." Oliver's eyes darted frantically. He seemed to have more urgent words he desperately wanted to say, likely a verbal will. I wasn't about to let that happen. I snatched the oral oxygen mask from the bewildered nurse's hand and forcefully jammed it over his mouth. With dead fish eyes staring blankly up at the fluorescent ceiling, Oliver was forcefully rolled into the operating room. An agonizing hour later, a senior nurse came out to ask for my medical directives regarding his resuscitation. "The patient's brain has sustained severe damage. Even if he survives the critical period, the likelihood of him becoming a permanent vegetative state patient is extremely high. Whether to continue life-saving measures is entirely up to the family's wishes," she explained gently, holding a clipboard to her chest. I didn't hesitate. I pulled a pen from my designer handbag. "I strongly demand that you save him. Where do I sign?" The nurse hesitated, biting her lip. "The resuscitation and initial surgery fees will be around $60,000. I cut off her sentence without missing a beat. "My family does not lack money, save him." The nurse gave me a look of deep admiration and respect, clearly touched by my devotion, and then handed me the critical condition notice to sign. Ultimately, after hours of grueling surgery, Oliver's life was preserved. Thank heavens. I had successfully acquired a comatose, vegetative husband. As long as his heart was beating, his assets remained safely frozen in our marriage. Not long after he was moved to the ICU, Chloe confidently marched into the inpatient ward, carrying the child. "Let's skip the small talk. Half of the assets and properties Oliver has earned belong to me and his child. I won't calculate every penny with you. Just give me $5 million, and we will be completely even," she demanded, her tone dripping with entitlement. I sneered coldly, crossing my arms. "I have been married to Oliver for 10 years. Who the hell do you think you are, opening your mouth to demand money from me?" Chloe thrust the child forward, right in front of my face. She said smugly, a victorious glint in her eye, "The law dictates that illegitimate children also have inheritance rights." I gave her a chilling smile and pointed directly at my vegetative husband, who was currently covered head to toe in medical tubes and hooked up to a dozen beeping machines. "You said it yourself. It is an inheritance right. Wait until my husband takes his last breath before you come back." The very next day, I completely changed my strategy. Leaving my designer clothes in the closet, I wore ragged, thrift store clothes to the hospital. I made sure my hair was messy, and my eyes were red from rubbing them. Finding the attending doctor in his office, I immediately started to wipe away tears. "Doctor, I really cannot scrape together any more money. Just keeping my husband alive is enough. We don't need the expensive restorative treatment medications," I sobbed, clutching a crumpled tissue. The doctor sighed softly, adjusting his glasses. "Neurotropic drugs are designed to promote the patient's awakening. Your husband has a very high chance of being cured. Giving up treatment now would be a terrible pity." I let out a devastating wail, covered my face, squatted down on the cold linoleum floor, and began to cry loudly. "I have failed my husband, boo-hoo. I've sold everything in the house that could be sold. I truly have no other way. Boo-hoo," I cried, my voice echoing down the hallway. The doctor let out a heavy sigh, his expression softening with pity. He stopped trying to persuade me and meticulously wrote my requests into the medical orders. Still playing the part, I tugged pitifully at the hem of the doctor's pants, looking up with tear-filled eyes. "Doctor, can we swap all the imported medications for domestic, generic ones? Otherwise, I won't even be able to afford the basic hospitalization fees." The doctor nodded helplessly, clearly feeling terrible for the massive financial burden I was supposedly facing. Expressing 1,000 heartfelt thanks, I slowly walked out of the doctor's office. Once out of sight, I immediately went to find the administrative charge nurse. "Please change us to a different hospital room. I am not picky at all, as long as it is cheap," I instructed. Frowning disapprovingly, the nurse relocated us to a cramped, dark, and narrow ward in the older wing of the hospital. I put on a thoroughly impoverished and desperate expression for her benefit. "Our family cannot afford to hire a dedicated private caregiver. A multi-patient shared room is just fine." The nurse cast a sidelong glance at me, clearly judging the drastic downgrade, and just hummed an acknowledgement. Looking at the dark mold spots on the walls and the worn-out, squeaky hospital bedding, I felt extremely satisfied. It was the perfect miserable backdrop for a man who had betrayed me for years. Leaving the ward, I threw my ragged outer coat directly into the trash can. The doctor had confidentially mentioned that Oliver wouldn't die for at least a year or a half in his current state. That gave me a comfortable timeline. I needed to carefully study and figure out exactly how to transfer his assets under my exclusive control. It didn't take long for the news to spread. When my mother-in-law, Martha, learned the news of Oliver's catastrophic car crash, she came to my house crying with snot and tears streaming down her face. The fact that Oliver dared to blatantly keep a mistress on the outside was, in many ways, all thanks to this mother of his. She used to brag to anyone at the country club who would listen about how capable her son was, claiming that having multiple women was a symbol of a wealthy man's prestige. Just looking at her sobbing on my front porch made me nauseous. "Save some of your strength. If you really care about your son, go to the hospital and nurse him yourself," I told her coldly, not offering her a tissue. My mother-in-law instantly stopped her tears, her maternal instincts finally kicking in over the theatrics. "How is my son doing now?" Grabbing a handful of sunflower seeds from a bowl on the counter, I casually replied, "He is in a vegetative state. The doctor says he won't wake up." Instantly, my mother-in-law began crying and screaming to the heavens, shouting that she didn't want to live anymore. Her dramatic wailing echoed through the foyer, I had made an appointment with a high-end real estate agent to sell our house and didn't have the time to listen to her nonsense. But she tightly grabbed hold of my arm, throwing a tantrum, and demanding that I take her to the hospital to see her son immediately. Walking into the shabby, run-down hospital room I had transferred him to, my mother-in-law looked at me through gritted teeth, her eyes practically shooting fire. "My son earns over $1 million a year, and you make him stay in a place like this?" she hissed, looking disgusted by the stained privacy curtains. I curled my lips dismissively. "Your son's money was all taken to support his women. I even had to borrow the money for this emergency surgery from my own family." My mother-in-law was trembling with sheer rage, refusing to accept the reality of her golden child's finances. "Bullshit. Stop trying to bluff me." Keeping a few women drained his entire fortune. I unlocked my phone and pulled out the massive digital dossier I had compiled. I showed her all the undeniable evidence of Oliver's lavish dining, drinking, high-end escort, hiring, and underground gambling, shoving the screen right in her face. "Mom, your son played incredibly wild. $1 million salary wasn't nearly enough for him to ruin," I said flatly. My mother-in-law was left completely speechless, staring blankly at the staggering credit card bills. Changing her tactic, she glared at me and interrogated, "Why did my son suddenly get into a car crash?" "It must be because you were constantly throwing tantrums and driving him crazy." I calmly pulled out the traffic police department's official statement from my purse and handed it to her. "You know Chloe, right? The one who celebrated your birthday with you last time. Your son was smashed half to death because he was trying to protect her. If you want to kill or hack someone, hurry up and go after her," I retorted, watching her face turn pale. Furious and devastated, my mother-in-law pounded her fists against the hospital wall. "Oliver, you are going to anger your mother to death." A nurse quickly came in and told us to keep quiet. Like a madwoman pushed to the brink, my mother-in-law grabbed the poor nurse by her collar. "When will my son wake up? I'm asking you. Can my son ever wake up?" she shrieked, shaking the terrified woman. The nurse was terrified and at a complete loss for what to do. I calmly pulled my mother-in-law aside and whispered conspiratorially to the nurse, "Ignore her. She has a psychiatric illness." The young nurse turned on her heels and ran for her life down the corridor. The real estate agent I hired was highly efficient. Within 3 short days, she helped me successfully sell our luxurious suburban home. How could she not be efficient? I sold a pristine $3 million house for a staggering $1 million below market value. Fortunately, the buyer was actually my cousin, who secretly compensated me with an additional $800,000 in cash under the table. It was a beautifully orchestrated, happy ending for everyone involved. But my mother-in-law inevitably found out that I had sold the house. Bringing my entitled sister-in-law, Sarah, along for backup, she physically blocked the doorway to prevent the moving company from packing my things. "My son isn't dead yet. How dare you sell the house?" she screamed, her face red with exertion. I replied with a perfectly innocent face, "It is exactly because your son isn't dead yet that I sold the house to save his life. Medical bills are expensive." With her eyebrows raised in absolute fury, my mother-in-law gritted her teeth and said, "You would save his life. With my son keeping so many women, you can't wait for him to die faster." Indeed, women understand women best. She had spoken the very deepest thoughts of my heart. I immediately turned and shouted to the workers from the moving company, "We're not moving today. I need to go to the hospital and pull the plug on my husband." My mother-in-law was so angry she almost vomited blood on the porch. If you dare pull the plug, I'll fight you to the death." I threw my hands up, feigning utter exasperation. "Mom, your son took all his money to play with women. When I try to sell the house to pay for his care, you won't let me, and if I pull the plug, you'll fight me to the death. Fine, I'll throw your son to you to take care of and pay for." Hearing the mention of taking over the financial burden, my sister-in-law immediately pulled a long, sour face. "Mom, let me make this clear first. I still have a share in the retirement savings you're holding on to. You absolutely cannot take that money to treat my brother's illness," Sarah declared, backing away from her mother. Since she was a child, My sister-in-law had been like the reincarnation of a heartless stone monkey. As long as her own financial interests were compromised, she would happily disown all her relatives. My mother-in-law marched right up and gave my sister-in-law a hard punishing shove. "Are you stupid? Half of your brother's house belongs to me. Once I get it back, do you think I'd shortchange you of your share?" she scolded. My sister-in-law's eyes darted around calculatingly. "Then go get it. If you can't get it back, hurry up and pull the plug on my brother." My mother-in-law was so furious at her own daughter's callousness, she almost passed out on the lawn. I, on the other hand, couldn't help but laugh until I staggered. With a ruthlessly greedy sister like this, combined with a vindictive wife in name only like me, Oliver essentially had no way out alive. I cleared my throat, reining in my laughter. "The mortgage on this house was paid off jointly by me and your son. Even if you drag this to court, your family has no legal claim to it whatsoever." Before Sarah could argue, I pulled my sister-in-law aside, dropping my voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "Chloe has a luxury townhouse under her name, fully paid for in cash by your brother. If we work together to get it back, you and I will split the profits evenly." My sister-in-law's eyes lit up like a cash register. "Really?" I nodded my head solemnly. "Your brain works much better than Mom's, and I'll need to rely on your efforts to deal with that mistress. I definitely have to include you for a share." Overjoyed by the prospect of a massive payday, my sister-in-law forcibly dragged my sputtering mother-in-law away from the property line. I smiled, pointing at the bewildered workers nearby. "Keep moving." My sister-in-law, Sarah, was an absolute battlefield warrior. The very next day, she marched straight to the upscale gated community and blocked Chloe at the entrance of her luxury townhouse. "The townhouse my brother bought belongs to me. You have exactly 3 days to pack your bags and get the hell out," Sarah demanded, her hands on her hips. In the past, Chloe had always gone out of her way to flatter Sarah and Martha, purely to keep Oliver happy. But now that Oliver was half dead and hooked up to machines, Chloe flipped her attitude faster than turning a page. "The house your brother bought for me has absolutely nothing to do with you," Chloe sneered, crossing her arms defensively. Without a second of hesitation, Sarah stepped forward and slapped Chloe hard across the face. "My brother isn't even divorced yet. This house belongs to our family," Sarah shrieked, her voice echoing through the quiet, manicured neighborhood. Refusing to be outdone, Chloe lunged forward and clawed fiercely at Sarah's face. "You can give up on that dream. This house belongs to my son," Chloe screamed back. Sarah clearly froze, her hands dropping for a split second. "What son?" Chloe let out a condescending, arrogant scoff. "Since your barren sister-in-law couldn't give birth, I went ahead and gave your brother a son." Sarah had always been notoriously single-minded and stubborn. She spat forcefully on the pristine pavement. "I don't care who you gave birth to. If you don't return this house to me, I'll expose every single dirty detail of you seducing a married man to the entire world." By now, the wealthy neighbors were starting to peek out of their doors and gather around, pointing and whispering. Chloe's carefully crafted persona in this neighborhood was that of an independent, intellectual beauty, with Sarah causing this massive public scene. Chloe's elegant image was completely shattered. Panicking, Chloe threw on her oversized designer sunglasses and tried to make a run for it. But Sarah was strong and sturdy. She grabbed onto Chloe's expensive dress and refused to let go. "You cheap tramp. You seduce other people's husbands, and now you think you can just run away," Sarah roared. In the ensuing scuffle, Chloe's designer miniskirt was yanked dangerously high up to her waist, leaving her undergarments completely exposed to the glaring daylight. A collective gasp and jeers erupted from the surrounding crowd of onlookers. Humiliated and enraged, Chloe grabbed a fistful of Sarah's hair and began ruthlessly slapping her face. Sarah didn't hold back either. She shoved Chloe hard onto the manicured lawn, pinned her down, and started throwing punches. The two women quickly rolled into a vicious feral brawl. Right there on the grass, the neighbors formed a tight circle around them, tossing out all sorts of nasty, judgmental comments. A few teenagers even pulled out their iPhones to secretly record the chaotic spectacle. I watched this entirely satisfying drama unfold from the shaded viewing pavilion of a cafe. Just across the street, a few minutes later, Chloe's mother frantically rushed out of the townhouse, tightly holding the baby to break up the fight. As the sun hit the infant's head, I suddenly realized something that made my heart skip a beat. The baby had a very distinct head of thick curly ringlets. My pulse raced. I also naturally had that exact same distinct pattern of curly hair. The last time we were at the hospital, Chloe had the baby bundled up so tightly I couldn't see a thing. Today was the first time I got a clear, unobstructed look at the child's features. Looking closely, the baby didn't just look like Oliver. Could it be? I quickly connected the dots of various strange events from the past, and a sudden massive realization hit me. That absolute bastard, Oliver, had played a massive deceitful trick on me. As soon as my mother-in-law found out Oliver had a biological son, it was as if she had been injected with a stimulant. Fired up, she immediately brought Chloe to Oliver's corporate headquarters, causing a massive scene, and demanding a massive workplace injury compensation payout. Oliver was a vice president at this tech firm. So when such a scandalous piece of gossip erupted, everyone in the building couldn't wait to spread the news. Even the cleaning staff abandoned their carts to come watch the spectacle unfold. Security guards attempted to physically escort Martha and Chloe out of the high-rise lobby. But the moment a guard stepped close, Chloe shrieked at the top of her lungs. Assault! The security guards are sexually assaulting me. Right on cue, my mother-in-law dramatically collapsed onto the marble floor, with a heavy thud, clutching her chest, and faking a severe heart attack. The company executives were completely overwhelmed by the chaos and frantically called me, begging me to come over and defuse the situation. After Oliver's accident, the company had generously given me a $500,000 emergency relief fund, treating me quite well. I didn't hesitate for a second, and rushed straight to the office. When I arrived, Martha was literally rolling around on the floor of the general manager's office. Two other vice presidents and the HR director had talked themselves hoarse trying to reason with her, but she vehemently refused to get up. If you don't classify my son's accident as a workplace injury and pay up, I'm never leaving this room, she threatened loudly. Chloe was sitting nearby, dabbing her eyes and weeping delicately. Our Oliver suffered such a tragic accident. Now we, a poor widowed mother and fatherless child, have no one to rely on. We are truly out of options, she sobbed. Oh, the absolute audacity of these two. Giving them an inch and they take a mile. Just because I hadn't shown my face. She was strutting around acting like she was the lawful wife. I walked straight through the double doors without uttering a single word. I marched right up to Chloe and delivered two echoing, open-handed slaps across her face. You little homewrecker. You seduce my husband, and now you have the nerve to come to his workplace and cause a scene. I'll tear you apart today, I yelled. Chloe held her stinging cheeks, her eyes welling with crocodile tears as she cried out, How could you just hit someone? I stepped forward and delivered another two vicious slaps. Hitting you is letting you off easy. If you hadn't constantly badgered my husband into taking you on that romantic coastal road trip, would he have gotten into that crash? You're playing the victim while being the villain. And you still have the nerve to demand corporate compensation. Gritting her teeth, Chloe glared at me and yelled. I didn't seduce Oliver. He told me he was fully divorced. And that is the only reason I got together with him. I let out a cold mocking laugh. Is that so? I still have those bedroom photos you maliciously sent to me. Do you remember exactly what you texted me back then? Chloe's face instantly drained of color. I smoothly pulled my smartphone from my purse, found the saved audio files, and turned the speaker volume all the way up. Chloe's shrill, unmistakable voice echoed off the corporate boardroom walls. You deadweight bitch. Your husband has been sleeping with me for over half a year. If you don't agree to sign those divorce papers, I'll sleep with him right in front of your face, you ugly cow. Your husband is lying completely naked next to me right now. Do you want me to send a picture? Did you see the photos? I am lying naked in your own marital bed right now. Your husband is having the time of his life. The spacious office instantly plunged into dead silence. The executives awkwardly exchanged deeply uncomfortable glances. Every single eye turned toward Chloe with thinly veiled disgust. I flashed a fiercely sarcastic smile. Still calling him our Oliver, are we? Chloe, making an affair sound so noble and tragic. You really are one of a kind. Chloe's face shifted rapidly from crimson red to stark white. She was completely, utterly silenced. Seeing Chloe completely lose the upper hand, my mother-in-law suddenly sprang up from the floor like a gymnast. She pointed at me and screamed, "You need to divorce my son immediately. Whoever gives me a grandson is my rightful daughter-in-law." This old woman, seeing that her son couldn't be saved, had instantly shifted all her loyalty to the grandson. I nodded calmly. Fine. Then I will go straight to the courthouse right now to sue Chloe. Once I reclaim all our marital assets from her, I'll gladly sign the divorce papers. Furious, my mother-in-law charged at me like a bull. That house belongs to my grandson. If you dare try to steal it, I'll fight you to the death. I simply took a casual step to the side. Unable to stop her momentum, Martha barreled right past me. With a loud hollow thud, she crashed headfirst directly into the oak-paneled wall. I put on a thoroughly exaggerated look of terror, patting my chest. I ask all the leadership here to be my witness. Whether this old lady lives or dies has absolutely nothing to do with me. My mother-in-law's eyes rolled to the back of her head, and she fainted dead away. Since the masks had entirely fallen off, I didn't need to hold back anymore. I spent $2 million to buy a luxurious riverside condo worth barely $1 million. Of course, the seller was a close friend of mine, and she secretly transferred the $1 million difference back to my private account, added to the cash from selling my previous home. I now had a cool $1.8 million of completely liquid, untraceable cash safely in my possession. Martha and Chloe weren't sitting idle either. They managed to drag a reporter from a highly rated local reality TV show, Family Mediators, and ambushed me right at the main entrance of my workplace. I had seen this trashy tabloid show before. It specialized in filming live, emotionally manipulative mediations over property disputes, alimony, and dramatic family feuds. Before I could even process what was happening, a cameraman had shoved a massive lens right into my face. I secretly gritted my teeth in anger, but I forced myself to maintain a calm, intellectual, and friendly demeanor. The negative examples featured on this show were routinely destroyed by the public on social media, and I wasn't going to be one of them. A short, plump female reporter introduced herself with over-the-top enthusiasm, and the ambush interview officially began. It was the morning rush hour, right when everyone was scanning their badges to get into the building. Within minutes, I spotted several colleagues watching. Damn it! Chloe's strategy was incredibly vicious. Trying to save face gracefully was probably impossible now. I decided to go all out. Chloe was clearly giving an Oscar-worthy performance, supporting my supposedly frail mother-in-law. Tears continuously pooled in her eyes, making her look as though she had suffered the world's greatest injustices. The female reporter wasted no time and immediately threw a deeply hostile question at me. Ms. Evans, we've heard that you and your husband have been separated for years, yet you stubbornly refuse to grant him a divorce. Is this true? I offered a polite, gentle smile. That is completely false. My husband and I have always had a deeply loving relationship. Just last month, we even went on a romantic beach vacation together. With Oliver currently lying in a hospital bed looking like a corpse, I could invent whatever narrative I wanted. The reporter was taken aback by my cheerful deviation from the expected script. She pressed harder. Your mother-in-law claims that you are entirely infertile. Is that a fact? Martha eagerly pushed her way toward the microphone. It is true. It is true. This vicious woman is a curse on our family, trying to end the Evans bloodline. The cameraman quickly zoomed in tightly on my face. I shook my head vigorously, looking deeply sympathetic. It is not that I can't have children. It is my husband who suffers from premature testicular failure and low sperm count. You know how men are. They're terrified of losing face over issues of masculinity. So I just let him blame it on me to protect his ego. My mother-in-law trembled with rage, pointing a shaking finger at me. Bullshit. My son has no medical issues whatsoever. You barren chicken. Stop trying to smear my son's good name. The reporter frowned slightly, turning her microphone toward Chloe. Tears immediately cascaded down Chloe's cheeks on command. I truly didn't know he wasn't legally divorced back then. Now our child is almost a year old. I just want to give my innocent baby a legitimate identity, so he can rightfully be acknowledged by his father's family. So that was the real motive. She wanted to publicly pressure me into divorcing Oliver. Chloe was actually quite calculating. If she successfully married Oliver now, the luxury townhouse under her name would be completely secure. Furthermore, on the inevitable day Oliver finally croaked, his massive corporate life insurance payout and death benefits would legally fall entirely into her lap. I let out a chillingly cold laugh and spoke with ringing clarity. Excuse me, but is it the official policy of your television network's journalists to help mistresses publicly harass and force lawful wives into a divorce? The female reporter's face changed drastically, and she frantically tried to distance the network from the accusation. This Miss Chloe contacted our production team seeking assistance. Our sole purpose today is to hopefully help all of you reach a peaceful settlement. I laughed openly. What kind of settlement? Am I supposed to voluntarily step aside and hand my marriage over to the mistress? The reporter was momentarily struck speechless. Chloe bravely stepped forward, her voice soft and pleading. Oliver is now in a vegetative state, so your marriage only exists in name anyway. I am begging you, could you please just dissolve the legal marriage? Oh, and you wouldn't even need to split the marital assets with me. I don't want a single dime of his money. Beautifully played. That speech earned her massive sympathy points. If I hadn't meticulously investigated her background, I might have actually fallen for it in the heat of the moment. The reporter immediately seized the opportunity to chime in. Ms. Evans, I know this might be very difficult for you to accept right now, and I deeply empathize. However, the mistakes of the adults shouldn't punish an innocent child. Moreover, since she isn't asking for any of the property, wouldn't you at least consider it? Before I even had to respond, Joan, a senior manager from the finance department, walked out the glass doors, paused, and circled back toward us. Looking suspiciously at the massive camera crew, she asked me, "Hey, what exactly is going on here?" I answered bluntly. My husband is keeping a mistress, and she hired a TV crew to publicly bully me into giving up my marriage. The reporter frantically tried to do damage control. No, that is not. Joan aggressively cut her off. So homewreckers destroying families have the moral high ground now? You are a public broadcasting network. Have you considered the social consequences of transmitting such morally bankrupt garbage just for cheap ratings? The reporter anxiously nodded in agreement. You are completely right. We definitely do not condone or encourage such immoral behavior. I shot Joan a look of profound gratitude. Immediately taking advantage of the shifting tide, I squeezed out a few pathetic tears for the camera. I still have absolutely no way to pay for my husband's mounting hospital bills. If your network could perhaps organize a telethon, or start a charity fund to help me collect donations, I would gladly agree to a divorce. Boo-hoo. I sobbed loudly. The female reporter was thoroughly defeated. Realizing she was outmatched, she waved off the cameraman. Cut the feed. Let's wrap it up. Wiping away my fake tears, I cheerfully hooked my arm through Joan's. As we walked toward the security turnstiles. Want to get sushi for dinner tonight? Joan nodded enthusiastically. Sure, sushi doesn't make you gain weight. Left standing out on the concrete plaza, Chloe stomped her designer heels in sheer frustration. I knew perfectly well that Chloe would never just let things go. I kept Oliver's smartphone fully charged and monitored it daily, keeping a very close eye on all of Chloe's social media updates. Just as I hoped, Chloe soon posted an urgent request on Facebook, looking for an experienced live-in nanny. I made a quick phone call to an old friend who ran an elite domestic staffing agency. Thanks to her, Chloe's nanny problem was solved incredibly fast. Not long after, my heart pounded nervously in my chest as I received a discreet, sealed package mailed to me by the nanny. I rushed it straight to an accredited genetics laboratory for testing. The results came back exactly as I had suspected. I wired an extra $5,000 to the nanny as a bonus, along with a few careful instructions. Heaven was finally showing me some mercy. The timing was absolutely flawless. I hired one of the most ruthless, high-profile litigation attorneys in the city, and officially filed a lawsuit in civil court. The demand was simple: legally recover the luxury townhouse that Oliver had secretly gifted to Chloe. Chloe was clearly receiving guidance from a very sharp lawyer of her own. Almost simultaneously, she filed a countersuit against both me and Oliver. Her demands included holding us financially responsible for the child's living expenses, educational trust funds, and premium medical care. The court scheduled my property lawsuit to be heard first. I don't know what kind of dark magic my mother-in-law used, but she somehow convinced my sister-in-law, Sarah, to perjure herself alongside her. The mother-daughter duo stood united on the witness stand, loudly crying foul on Chloe's behalf. Chloe sat at the plaintiff's table, arms crossed confidently, smoothly spitting out a web of absolute lies. Oliver deceived me into believing he was completely single. Later, he forced himself on me and raped me. Funding the purchase of my townhouse was his way of providing psychological compensation for the trauma. Sarah, casually wearing a thick gold bracelet that I recognized as belonging to Chloe, chimed in righteously. My brother took me and Chloe out to dinner once. Chloe was totally innocent and clueless. She was absolutely conned by my brother. My attorney stepped up to the podium and directly questioned Chloe. You claim Oliver sexually assaulted you. What was the exact date of this incident? Chloe had clearly rehearsed her timeline perfectly. She answered without skipping a beat. Valentine's Day, the year before last. I smiled inwardly and slid a small USB drive across the table to my lawyer. Oliver had always had a sickeningly twisted fetish. He frequently took advantage of my business trips to bring various women into our marital home for the night. Knowing that our marriage wouldn't last, I had planned ahead to meticulously gather irrefutable evidence of his infidelity. I had covertly installed hidden pinhole cameras in every corner of the house, the specific date Chloe named. What an incredible stroke of luck. I was away touring the Swiss Alps on that exact day. Oliver had brought Chloe back to our house, and they spent over half a month living there together. The judge allowed the files on the USB drive to be played in open court. There was Chloe, lying provocatively in my bed, right beneath my framed wedding portrait, behaving as intimately and willingly as humanly possible. Chloe's expensive attorney watched the footage, his face turning an unhealthy shade of green. My lawyer seamlessly followed up by submitting a mountain of corroborating financial documents and texts. The chain of evidence was airtight, leaving absolutely no room for debate. Striking while the iron was hot, I stood up and introduced a new devastating angle. I am officially seeking to press criminal charges against Oliver for bigamy. My mother-in-law scoffed loudly from the gallery. My son is already a vegetable. Even if you convict him of bigamy, what exactly are you going to do to him? I calmly pulled out a glossy medical brochure detailing a cutting-edge, highly successful experimental treatment program for comatose patients at a prestigious clinic in Europe, and held it up for her to see. Mom, despite everything, Oliver and I were married for years. I had originally planned to use the money from selling our house to fly him overseas for this life-saving treatment. A desperate glimmer of hope instantly flared in my mother-in-law's eyes. With a swift motion, I snatched the brochure right back out of her view. But I just thought about it carefully. We should probably put his medical treatments on hold. It is much more important to pursue the criminal bigamy charges against him first. Martha panicked instantly, completely losing her mind with anxiety. She frantically yelled at the judge, waving her hands wildly. Everything I just said earlier doesn't count. I made the whole thing up. The judge banged his gavel, issuing a stern warning. Witness, committing perjury severely undermines the integrity of the judicial system and damages the authority of the law. If verified, you could face severe criminal penalties yourself. My mother-in-law looked ready to drop to her knees and grovel before the bench. I'm telling the truth now. I swear I'm telling the truth. Chloe is just a mistress, My son kept on the outside, and the house was bought entirely with my son's money. All that garbage about rape and psychological compensation is a total lie. With both physical evidence and witness testimony completely aligning, the outcome was sealed. The court issued its ruling immediately. Oliver's gifting of the property was legally void, and Chloe was ordered to return the townhouse in full. Chloe tried to play dirty and completely refused to hand over the keys. I immediately filed for court-ordered compulsory enforcement. Chloe had lost the war, suffering a devastating and absolute defeat. Chloe, entirely shameless, actually posted the court's official judgment against her on her social media, accompanying it with a lengthy tear-jerking essay, playing the ultimate victim. A few days later, two of Oliver's insufferable golf-playing buddies, Brad and Chad, took it upon themselves to confront me on Chloe's behalf. They showed up at a local cafe I frequented, smelling of expensive cologne and cheap morals. Listen, Clara. Oliver is in a tragic state right now. At the very least, he left behind a blood heir. You need to give Chloe and the boy a way to survive, Brad said, leaning forward with a patronizing look. I let out a harsh laugh. By a way to survive? You mean I should let Chloe keep my family's money so she can continue dripping in designer jewelry and living in a luxury multi-million-dollar townhouse? Otherwise, she just won't be able to go on, right? Brad, who loved to play the moral arbiter when it didn't cost him a dime, sighed heavily. Clara, setting your personal grudges aside, just do it out of pity for the innocent child. I slammed my hand down on the FF table, rattling the silverware. My husband slept with some tramp on the side for years and didn't contribute a single cent to our household expenses. And you're telling me to set my grudges aside? Do you think I'm Mother Teresa? Brad still tried to persuade me, his tone thick with fake sympathy. Clara, you can't just let the child suffer out on the streets with Chloe. I was seething with rage. I pointed a sharp finger directly at his face. You have the nerve to bring up the child to me. If I had given birth to a child, I'd pity them. But why the hell should I care about a mistress's bastard? The other friend, Chad, was even more despicable, speaking words that perfectly matched his sleazy reputation. Clara, you can't have kids of your own. You shouldn't be the reason Oliver's bloodline completely ends. Chad sneered maliciously. I immediately grabbed my cup of hot Earl Grey tea and splashed the scalding liquid right across his smug face. Who said I can't have kids? Oliver is riddled with dirty diseases from his whoring. How dare you pin his infertile bloodline on my head? I shouted. Brad frantically tried to smooth things over, wiping down his friend. Clara, look, when all is said and done, for Oliver's sake, you shouldn't burn every bridge. If you let Chloe off the hook and give her the house, when Oliver finally wakes up, he'll remember your kindness. I offered a mocking venomous smile. Your dear friend Oliver is half dead. I'm certainly not banking on him remembering my kindness. As for you two, I had long known about the disgusting swingers club antics these men participated in. Whichever one of you can't bear to see Chloe suffer, why don't you pull $1 million out of your own pockets to support her? That way, the next time you sleep with her, you can feel like a real gentleman. I spat. Brad's face contorted as I exposed his dirty little secret, his expression turning incredibly ugly. Clara, if you stop fighting Chloe for the townhouse, Chloe will drop her lawsuit demanding child support. It is a clean break for both of you. Brad tried one last desperate negotiation tactic. A clean break, my ass. How much could child support possibly amount to? Can it even compare to a $3 million luxury townhouse? I yelled, standing up and crossing my arms. I cursed them out loud enough for the whole CFA to hear. Stop pretending to be righteous heroes in front of me. Whoever steps up to pay Oliver's massive medical bills, I will gladly hand the townhouse over to Chloe. If you're not pulling out your checkbooks, then shut your mouths and get out. Chad's face darkened with anger. If you won't listen to reason, fine. But your words are incredibly harsh. I stood up forcefully and pointed toward the cafe exit. Get the hell out of my sight right now, or my words are going to get a lot harsher. Utterly humiliated, the two frat bros scuffled out of the cafe, with their tails between their legs. A few days later, Chloe's lawsuit demanding child support officially went to trial. Chloe came highly prepared, Not only did she bring Oliver's scumbag friends, Brad and Chad, to support her, but she also invited the female reporter from the Family Mediators TV show to sit in the gallery. In court, Chloe's attorney listed a series of outrageous financial demands. From imported organic diapers to elite private school tuition and Ivy League preparatory courses, the total requested sum approached $2 million. Chloe was incredibly smug, fully believing she had a guaranteed win. An arrogant, triumphant smirk played on her lips the entire time. This time, I didn't even bother bringing my high-priced attorney to court. Dealing with an idiot like Chloe was a one-woman job. When it was my turn for the defense's opening statement, I stood up calmly, with a polite smile. I clearly stated to the judge that I had absolutely no objections to Chloe's financial demands. The entire courtroom gallery was stunned. Brad loudly muttered a curse word in sheer disbelief. The judge firmly ordered the gallery to remain quiet, looking at me with a confused expression, and asked me to confirm my statement. I repeated confidently, "I have no objections." A sly, excited gleam flashed in Chloe's eyes. She elegantly adjusted the silk designer scarf around her neck, practically getting ready to pack up her bag and leave the courtroom victorious. Seeing that the trap was perfectly set, I cleared my throat. "I have no objections to the amount of child support requested. However, before any money is paid, I formally request a court-ordered DNA paternity test for the child," I announced. The judge nodded, noting that this was a completely standard and reasonable legal request. Chloe maintained a calm expression, showing not a single trace of panic. I smiled slightly and immediately added my final, lethal blow. "And I am not just asking for a paternity test to match the child to Oliver. I am explicitly demanding a court-ordered maternity test for Chloe." The courtroom gallery erupted into a massive uproar. Chloe's face instantly drained of all blood, turning as white as a sheet. She jumped up and screamed frantically, "I object. This lawsuit is against Oliver's estate. On what grounds are you forcing me to take a maternity test?" I knew exactly that she would react this way. I spoke slowly, emphasizing every single syllable. "If the child biologically belongs to both Chloe and Oliver, I will happily write the child support check. However, if the child is Oliver's, but the biological mother is someone else entirely, Chloe has absolutely no legal standing to demand a single cent of child support from me. And if the child doesn't belong to Oliver at all, then suing me for child support is an absolute joke. Therefore, I turned to her, my voice ringing crisply through the quiet courtroom. "Chloe, without a court-ordered DNA test, how on earth am I supposed to know which category you fall into?" Chloe was visibly trembling, completely panicked. She vehemently, desperately refused to consent to the DNA test. The people in the gallery weren't stupid. They instantly sensed the massive scandalous implications hidden beneath her panic, and the room fell dead silent. Finally, the judge struck the gavel. "The defendant's request is highly relevant and legally sound. The motion is granted. The court will order the genetic testing. Once the official DNA results are submitted, we will select a date to reconvene and proceed with this trial." Defeated and terrified, Chloe collapsed heavily back into her chair. I was in an exceptionally fantastic mood. Using my parents' names, I purchased a stunning high-rise luxury penthouse overlooking the river. I hired the city's top interior design firm, and immediately began renovations. The dark clouds over my life were finally clearing up. Right at this crucial transitional juncture in my life, I got a call. Oliver had woken up. I rushed to the hospital at lightning speed. The moment I stepped into the grand first-floor lobby, I spotted my mother-in-law and Chloe anxiously waiting for the main elevator. Without missing a beat, I pivoted toward the stairwell and sprinted up 5 entire flights of stairs without stopping for breath. Panting heavily, I tracked down the attending doctor in the hallway. "Doctor, has my husband fully recovered consciousness?" The doctor shook his head grimly. "The patient is suffering from a massive systemic internal infection. He has very little time left. If you have any final words, say them now." I patted my chest, exhaling a massive sigh of relief. He scared me to death. I almost thought that bastard had actually pulled through. The second I pushed open the door, and stepped into the ward. My mother-in-law and Chloe hurried in right behind me. Oliver was staring desperately at Chloe, his mouth opening and closing weakly, as he tried to speak. Before he could utter a single syllable, I threw myself violently onto Oliver's chest, grabbing his hospital gown collar, and wailing with deafening volume, "Oh honey, you finally woke up, boo-hoo. Thank God, boo-hoo." I shrieked right into his ear. Oliver weakly raised a withered, frail hand. Trying desperately to push my weight off of him, I snatched his hand tightly out of the air, and crushed it between both of mine. "Honey, I know you couldn't bear to leave me. Boo-hoo, and I can't bear to lose you either, boo-hoo," I sobbed, putting my entire body weight onto his failing lungs. Martha squeezed past us and immediately joined in the theatrical wailing. "Oliver, Mom finally has hope. Without you here to support me, Mom would..." I instantly talked over my mother-in-law to ensure Oliver couldn't get a word in edgewise. "Honey boo-hoo, Mom has worried herself sick over you. Her hair has turned so white. Boo-hoo." Standing directly behind me, Chloe shrieked in absolute panic. "Oliver has something to say. Both of you, get out of the way right now." I pretended I was completely deaf. I kept half my body sprawled across Oliver's chest, crushing him while sobbing hysterically. Oliver gasped out what sounded like a desperate final instruction, but it was instantly drowned out by my and Martha's deafening wails. Chloe was going crazy with anxiety, forcefully trying to drag me off the bed by my shoulders. I arched my back and violently resisted her. Underneath me, Oliver was being crushed so hard, his eyes were rolling to the back of his head. My mother-in-law had no idea Oliver was in his final moments, so she just kept rambling and crying next to his ear. Whenever she cried, I cried louder, ensuring there was never a single second of silence in the room. My entire performance screamed, a wife driven mad by joy. Oliver could only produce a few weak, suffocated rattling sounds from his throat, his eyes filled with desperate panic and longing. In a sheer panic, Chloe turned and screamed at the doctors and nurses lingering by the door. "The patient has an official will to declare. Hurry up and drag these two crazy women out of here." I was more than happy to turn this into a brawl. I stood up quickly and kicked Chloe hard in the shin. "I am the patient's lawful wife. If there is a will, he tells it to me. You are nothing but trash," I yelled. Chloe scrambled up and tried to lunge onto Oliver's bed. "Oliver, Oliver, I know you have something to say to me. Say it quickly." I grabbed the back of her shirt and violently yanked her away. "My husband has absolutely nothing to say to you. Get the hell out of here." Chloe tightly gripped the bedrail, refusing to let go. I whipped my head around and screamed at the hospital staff. "Are the security guards in this hospital dead? If you don't remove this lunatic and my husband's condition worsens, I will sue this hospital into the ground." Frightened, the nurses rushed in to physically pull Chloe out into the hallway. Chloe fought the nurses like a rabid dog, screaming wildly over her shoulder. "Oliver, tell them the luxury townhouse you bought belongs to me. Say it. There are so many witnesses here right now. Say it. Damn it." So she wanted to play this game. Then all the rules were officially off. I leaned down close, pressing my lips directly to Oliver's ear, and whispered sadistically, "Chloe has been sleeping around with Brad and Chad. Brad's wife caught the two of them naked in bed, and they are in the middle of a messy divorce as we speak." Oliver's cloudy, bloodshot eyes bulged so hard they nearly popped out of their sockets. I poured more fuel onto the fire. "And I don't know if Chloe's completely lost her mind, but she doesn't even want your son anymore. She has been screaming about throwing him into an orphanage." Oliver's entire body began to violently convulse and tremble. He turned his gaze toward Chloe, a look of pure unadulterated venom and hatred in his eyes. Chloe was still desperately clinging to the doorframe, waiting for Oliver to legally back her up. When she suddenly met his hateful glare, she recoiled in shock. And then, as if something in her finally snapped, she lunged at Oliver like a mad woman, wrapping her hands tightly around his throat. "You absolute bastard. You won't even leave me a will. I wasted 3 years of my youth on you, and I have absolutely nothing to show for it," she screamed. I quickly took a large step back, giving her plenty of room to strangle him properly. My mother-in-law panicked and frantically rushed forward, trying to pry Chloe's manic fingers off her son's neck. In her blind panic, Martha wasn't looking where she was stepping, and her heavy orthopedic shoe stomped down hard on the vital tubes of Oliver's ventilator. Oliver's breathing, which was already incredibly weak, instantly became frantic and shallow. The nurses immediately noticed something was critically wrong. They frantically screamed at the two women to get out of the way, but Martha and Chloe were locked in a vicious tug-of-war, completely ignoring the medical staff. In less than a minute, the green waveform on the cardiac monitor flattened out completely, transforming into a stark, continuous straight line. Oliver was finally permanently gone. Oliver's funeral arrangements were kept incredibly simple, devoid of any unnecessary mourning or expensive ceremonies. I didn't even bother buying a proper urn from the funeral home's overpriced selection catalog. While cleaning out the pantry earlier that morning, I casually dug out an old, brightly colored vintage tea tin. I simply dumped out the stale tea leaves directly into the kitchen trash can, and decided it would be the perfect final resting place for my cheating husband. It was the exact level of dignity he had earned. When we arrived at the crematorium, the somber atmosphere was immediately shattered. Seeing me holding a bright cherry red tea tin to collect her beloved son's ashes, Martha clutched her chest, looking like she was going to have a genuine stroke. She was so horrified, she almost passed out right there in the sterile viewing room. The funeral director, dressed in a pristine black suit, aggressively tried to control his facial expressions and maintain a professional demeanor as he carefully funneled the cremated remains into my makeshift container. However, the tea tin was simply too small to hold an adult man's ashes. Looking blankly at the substantial pile of gray ash remaining on the metal processing tray, I casually waved my hand in dismissal. "I don't need the rest. Just throw it away," I instructed the director in a flat, uncaring tone. My mother-in-law's eyes bulged with sheer panic, and she screamed at the top of her lungs, "Who says we don't want it? You can't leave a single speck of him behind." I let out an exasperated sigh, digging around in my designer handbag. Finally, I pulled out a crumpled, greasy, translucent plastic bag that had previously held a powdered jelly donut from my breakfast. I handed the greasy pastry bag to the bewildered mortician. "Fine then. Just put the rest of the ashes in here," I said casually. Martha went completely ballistic, losing whatever shred of sanity she had left, shrieking and cursing at me in the middle of the crematorium. While she was busy throwing a hysterical tantrum and hyperventilating over the donut bag, I greased my soles and swiftly slipped out the back door, escaping the miserable scene entirely. With Oliver dead and the truth coming to light, there was absolutely no way the child could remain in Chloe's toxic environment. The elite nanny I had hired acted swiftly. Finding the perfect window of opportunity when Chloe was distracted, she discreetly packed up the baby and brought him safely out of the townhouse to me. After careful consideration and consulting with my attorneys, I took the official genetic testing documents straight to the local vital records office and the police precinct to formally establish identity. Following that, I submitted the original, certified DNA test results directly to the family court judge. A few days later, the court officially announced its ruling. The DNA paternity and maternity tests conclusively proved that I, along with Oliver, were the biological parents of the infant boy. Chloe's highly publicized lawsuit demanding exorbitant child support was completely thrown out, resulting in her absolute humiliating defeat. Deep down, Chloe had known she would likely lose the child support case the moment the judge ordered the DNA tests. However, she could never have imagined in her wildest nightmares that the child was actually the biological offspring of me and Oliver. To be completely honest, I had been kept entirely in the dark about this deeply twisted scheme for a long time as well. Years ago, when Oliver was diagnosed with premature testicular failure and a severely low sperm count, we sat down and agreed to pursue in vitro fertilization. I went through the agonizing, hormonally draining process of egg retrieval multiple times, and we attempted embryo implantation twice, but unfortunately, neither attempt was successful. Later on, when Oliver's career took off and he became extremely wealthy, he began staying out all night, drowning in alcohol, women, and degeneracy. Seeing what he had become, I completely abandoned all thoughts of ever having a child with him. I simply never expected that Oliver would sneak behind my back, utilize my frozen genetic material, and illegally hire a clandestine surrogate to carry his heir. If I hadn't caught a clear glimpse of the baby's head, noticing he had inherited my family's highly distinct curly ringlet hair, I never would have thought to investigate this possibility. Upon learning the truth, Chloe completely collapsed mentally. Every single valuable asset, bank account, and property under her name was forcefully seized and liquidated by the court to repay the marital estate. She had wasted the absolute best years of her youth, following around an ugly cheating pig like Oliver, and in the end, she was left with absolutely nothing to show for it, while Chloe was facing utter ruin. My life was turning out to be incredibly comfortable and perfectly nourished. My scumbag of a husband had died an early death. My immense financial assets hadn't shrunk by a single penny, and I even got to bring home a beautiful chubby biological son. The luxury townhouse we seized back from Chloe was quickly sold on the market for an impressive $3 million. According to state inheritance laws, half of that estate automatically belonged to me as his lawful widow. The remaining half was divided equally into 3 portions. One for me, one for my child, and one for my mother-in-law. Having lost her son but miraculously gained a legitimate biological grandson to carry on the family name, Martha actually found a great deal of emotional comfort and solace. In a surprising moment of clarity and maternal loyalty, she completely ignored my sister-in-law Sarah's greedy, hysterical screaming and demands, and officially waived her right to the inheritance, leaving her entire share to the baby. Touched by this rare display of decency, I secretly wired $500,000 directly into Martha's private bank account. That is simply the kind of person I am, and my philosophy is straightforward. If you desperately fight me tooth and nail, I will ruthlessly battle you until the very end. But if you back down, show respect, and don't fight me, I will absolutely ensure you are generously taken care of. Leaving the past entirely behind, I took my chubby little boy and moved into my breathtaking new riverside penthouse. The newly renovated, custom-designed nursery was absolutely beautiful, bathed in warm natural sunlight. I quickly noticed that the baby's temperament and personality were incredibly similar to mine, filling the space with laughter. Looking at the massive secure balances in my bank accounts, and then looking down at the adorable sleeping child in my arms, I smiled. My life was finally completely perfect.
That's all for today. I'm Lina. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more amazing stories every week. Thanks for watching.